about those hands-off protests? Cute title, right? Sounds like something written on Joy Behar's lunchbox at work. But it's fun hearing hands off from people whose hands are in your wallet, scratching Teslas and reaching for your kids. And with so many trans women in the crowd, some of those hands were huge. But what an exercise in mass performance art. The message? For the government to keep its hands off Social Security. Of course, no one's touching that. It's about fraud. So the entire event was also a fraud. But hands off is pure progressive branding. Big emotion, zero accuracy. It's like staging a protest to save the whales in Nebraska when we all know whales are in New York. So, what's this really about? It's about having no argument against the thing it's railing against, Doge, which is designed to actually help the people who are protesting. Doge's actual goal? Preventing a full-blown economic collapse. The kind where the U.S. dollar becomes so worthless, I don't even bother to take them out of my G-string after a show. But rather than confront that terrifying reality, the organizers cooked up a fake crisis. They claim Doge is trying to destroy Social Security, which is like accusing the fire department of starting fires by pouring water on them. They're also claiming that Social Security payments will cease if Doge isn't stopped. Please, it's 2025. The checks are digital. So no, grandma won't be eating fancy feasts because Trump took an honest look at waste and abuse. That's a lie. But the most cynical part? The organizers know this. They know that they need to kill Trump's agenda if they're ever going to get their power back. And so they'd rather see the system burn than admit Trump has a point. It's the same group that brought you Russian collusion, democracy's death, Joe's just fine, and the classic 15 days to flatten the curve, which sadly had nothing to do with Peyronie's disease. Of course, if these people told me the Earth is round, I'd check what planet I'm on. Fact is, if we do nothing, Social Security goes broke. The Congressional Budget Office says it's toast in 2 years. That's not a hunch, it's math. But instead of dealing with it, the usual suspects deem it evil because in short term, it helps them. Because if Trump solves this crisis, that's the real threat to their ecosystem of imaginary crisis. And their upside-down world where George Floyd's a hero, the women's bathroom needs urinals, and Tim Walz is the only real man left. What they really want is to scare you into giving them back power. And they can easily find bodies to do it. Why is that? Well, they pay them. And these protests exploit the human desire to find a mission. The mission is false, but it indulges their sense of meaninglessness. But this mission doesn't relieve that anxiety, it just worsens it. The protests come up out of nowhere because a party has groomed millions of people to act based on inner turmoil. It is one thing to try and solve an external problem, since the solution itself would bring relief. But if the problem is you, that's an endless supply of strife, which the Dems exploit. At the beginning, it was class warfare, then identity politics. Now you got both, where grievances are endless. But after every protest, you only feel worse and ready to be exploited again. If the Dems do this correctly, they create an enclosed loop. And once you get on there, there's no getting off. It's an imagined reality and no help to your actual reality because it solves nothing. But there is an unintended benefit to this. It brings curious people face to face with what they could be, which might be the first step in alienating them from the party. Is this who I am? Is this who I identify with? A blue-haired they, them, and a Hamas scarf shouting that Nazis are oppressing they and them? It's no longer just you on the internet. You're now face to face with your alleged allies. There for the grace of God go you. And boy, does it suck. Let's welcome tonight's guest! He's brilliant and British and makes lefties skittish. Author of the new book on democracies and theft cults, Douglas Murray. Is that a hot pocket, or are you happy to see me? Chef and restaurant owner Andrew Growell. This former cheerleader exhausts every lip reader. Co-host without number, Emily Cabano. And despite their loss of bone density, old women love him with intensity. New York Times bestselling author, comedian, and former NBA World Champion. So, Douglas, congratulations on your brand new book. It's right here on democracies and death cults. A lighthearted romp, I hear.
Yes, exactly. It's about the last 18 months of war and therefore perfect for late night comedy.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Let's just open up to page 103. And there I was standing before Gutfeld. He was shirtless, explaining to me capitalist democracy.
Hey, that's my diary.
All right, sorry. Okay. I always don't want to crap on these protesters because it doesn't persuade them if you just say they're stupid. But there's something underneath this, do you think, that is, like, how are they so willing to be mobilized for something that isn't true?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's because, as you said, there's this resentment underneath it, always. And this activity, it's something to do for these people. If you've been told for the last 15 years something, there's always a cause, you know. One point, you know, we're living in the middle of a climate crisis, then it's got to be, I don't know, a rape crisis, and it's a race crisis, and then since November, they haven't really had a crisis.
They had a crisis.
They had a crisis.
Yes.
And then they've come up with this lame new slogan. But this is what, I mean, you know, most of us look at these people and we think, how on earth do you have so much time free? How come you're not only free during weekdays, as you said, you're free at weekends, you don't have family, you don't have work? And the answer is no.
Yeah.
They don't.
Well, if they have family, the family is relieved that they're out of the house.
Exactly.
Go protest.
They're saying, have you heard about the crisis?
Yeah, God, they loved those days of BLM when you were marching every day. They didn't eat all our food, Andrew, speaking of food. Did you notice how professional all these signs were and how prepared they were? They're not hiding the dark money anymore.
No, they're not hiding it at all, but the signs made no sense. So I actually pulled up a lot of these pictures and zoomed in. It was horrible. It was like, Elon Musk has no tusk. Like, it was the dumbest stuff, right? Like, they came up with them so quickly.
But that's true. He doesn't. He's not an elephant. Finally, a factual sign.
You're right, but he is a marsupial. He has a pouch. So a pouch of money, according to them. The thing is, they're bored, and that's a great point that you bring up. But why are they bored? They're bored because they don't have a North Star. They don't have a moral compass. They don't have a foundation. They're not rooted to anything. And there's probably 5 or 10 leaders at the top of this circus that goes around town every few weeks or every few months that are controlling them. And these are their minions. These are the circus animals. And they listen to them. It is literally a cult. I'm mad at the people who are controlling them. I'm not necessarily mad at the people because they're so lost, and it is incredibly sad. And I agree as well about what are they doing, why on a Saturday? How can you mobilize 12,000 people on a Saturday? If you ask me, are you available next Saturday? I've got 6 baseball games, Little League, the restaurant's probably going to be on fire. Lauren's already angry at me, I can tell. And it's like, because I have a life, because I have community, I have family, I'm rooted in something. These people have nothing to do, and if you look across the expanse of the audience, it's all middle-aged white women, a couple men in there, but they're women too. And what is it? Hands off, you know, hands off what? Hands off my Ovaltine, hands off my hard candies. Like, these are old, elderly people who have nothing to live for.
Yeah, it's not hands off my body because no one's going there.
Nobody is.
Was that mean, Emily? Andrew does bring up a good point. There seems to be a demographic there. Maybe the older people have more free time. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, look, we see this every week on Tuesdays. There is definitely a demographic that I think has been writing that sedative for a long time. Look, if energy is neither created nor destroyed, I was thinking about this, that their obsessions either have to remain or be transferred. And these are the same people. I'm sure that the hands-off signs were repurposed from hands off my uterus, right? These are the same protesters that have been finding something always. But the issue here is that there's actually nothing to protest. Someone approached me in the grocery store last week and recognized me and had some questions. And I won't bore you with what he said, but when he said he's afraid for the future, he and his husband, I said, well, what exactly, articulate what you're afraid of and let's talk about it. And he said, democracy. And I said, well, okay. There was zero ability for him to specify exactly or articulate exactly what it was that was threatened in our future currently. So I said, I mean, funny, because liberty's infringed and dangerous streets and my dollar going nowhere and listed a whole bunch of things. That happened under the prior administration. In this one, I'm finally free. But these people have always been shackled to a concept that they can't free think, they can't independently verify something or question what they're told. So the delusion syndrome exists. It's been transferred from whatever they've been protesting. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure what's going to happen when suddenly they look around and they say, the streets are safer. My dollar is further. I am happier. What is there to complain about?
You did make a mistake when you were telling the story. You said he and his husband. I just want you to correct that.
No, but it was.
Yeah, sure it was. That doesn't really exist. That's only on TV shows. Tyrus! What did you get out of this? Did you also notice it was it was like almost your fan base?
No, they're not mine. No, hell no. No. You, Gutfeld, don't put that on me. Mine are silver foxes.
That is true.
They have retirement. They work for a living. They raise families. They go to bed with their extremely happy husband every night with me. Husbands love me more than silver foxes do because their wife goes to bed happy, they end up lucky. So that is my group. And after a wild night of Gutfeld and loving, they don't have time to go to protesting in the morning. They're resting their hips, stretching, getting ready for another round of Gutfeld. Having said that, this is the bottom of the gene pool. And just so you know, those people aren't old. Those are the most shot-out 23-year-olds you've ever seen in your life. There's a reason why tigers eat their young, and people don't. There was this rumor that aliens came down and helped primates become more advanced faster than everyone else. They also say that a certain group didn't get the push. There they are. Their sentences don't make sense. They're doing this because they live off checks. They live off us. They live off taxpayers. So they can go, and if they're out there doing that, they don't have to pay attention to how crappy their life is because they choose to be lazy and not in the bed. Oh no, I'm disabled. I'm this, I'm that. There's a million people with the same problems who get their asses up every day or wheel their asses out the house every day and get things done. So no, this is the bottom of the gene pool, and they're going to do it. Doesn't even make sense. Hands off our education, blah, 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 democracy and uterus. Now we have group uteruses.
Yes, uteri.
I mean, that's the front line. That's the top of the class, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, you can't spell uterus without you. Or I. No, you can. There's two U's. Yeah. You can't spell uterus.
But if you're saying hands off uterus, that means you have no idea where the hand goes in the first place.
All right, time to move on. That was scintillating. What next? What's next? Oligarchs. Yay.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.